afternoon on my behalf as well. It is a great honor for me to be with you in this conference, especially as a speaker. I will be discussing an emerging technology, blockchain, and how that can help us with acquiring trust in the food market. I will start off with a short video presentation. On behalf of the interpreters, kindly note that videos are not translated.
An outbreak and I can't see it because of all the noise, because everything is on paper and I can't connect the dots.
What we as an industry need to do is provide that end-to-end visibility so that as issues arise, we can depend on each other to deliver information quickly that we can then act on.
If you're trying to chase trends, if you're trying to keep up with scarcity, if you're trying to respond to an abundance, taking any time at all to respond means you're already several steps behind. IBM Food Trust is a blockchain system that consists of digitizing information about our food supply chain in a way that's indelible, in a way that is searchable, so that we can have instant access to records that we can have faith in.
I believe that the benefits for food safety are just the tip of the iceberg. 1/3 of all food that gets produced is wasted. IBM Food Trust could allow you to optimize supply chain efficiencies, take out days of shelf life, reducing food waste both in store and at home.
You're stitching together a transaction flow that by itself is important, but then you add all of these other data from IoT devices and stitch it into the same record. Now you have higher quality, higher visibility to your supply chain and digital records confirming that that should be trusted.
Providing safe and affordable food is not only a daunting challenge, but for us, it's an important responsibility. We can trace origin of food products back to source in 2.2 seconds. That's food traceability at the speed of thought.
We're expecting improved transparency, improved trust, and improved speed. All those are possible with IBM Food Trust and with blockchain, and I hope for more adoption across the food ecosystem.
Σε αυτό το σύντομο βίντεο, άνθρωποι της αγοράς από μεγάλες εταιρείες, είδατε Walmart.
So you saw representatives of quite big companies from Walmart. This is a video that was taken 4 years ago. The Greek person that you may have recognized there, who was in Walmart, is now a member of the FDA Council, and they were discussing how things can change in order to tackle problems and concerns in this complex ecosystem that has to do with the food market, and it's quite highly complicated chain supply. People grow sick. We spoke of fraud, lack of authenticity, problems in packaging or distribution. There's a heightened need for transparency, and this is something that can help both consumers and the companies involved. So in a very simple schematic, when trying to depict this complex supply chain, we see the multiple players, each with their own part to play, and each is responsible for their own data. Within their headquarters, they've got their data and their own version of the truth. The producer, for example, the grower has the data on production. If we move to the retailer, they've got data having to do with what's on the shelf. In order for that data to be exchanged, information to be exchanged, quite often it takes a long time. Lots of things are on paper, they're still not digitalized, and this is the next step in this wonderful new technological setting that to some people still sounds like a sci-fi setting, but it has to have to deal with traceability, digitization, identification, and exchanging data to all that need to have a share of it. And very often for someone to look for something in all this complex ecosystem, they have to turn to the person that's left or right, upstream or downstream the supply chain, and that means time and money. And there's no universal, no distributed database which is certified and makes you certain that this information is true and cannot be tampered with. And this is what blockchain addresses. This is what the problems that blockchain resolves. It allows all players the opportunity to digitize their information, their data in blocks. And each block, with the passage of time and whatever happens, for example, things may change with respect to the product or things may change with respect to the player. But every change can be integrated into that block of information. And that means that the entire system, the entire chain has access to accredited information and data. So growers will enter information as to production. Logistics providers will enter data as to, for example, the temperature and time with which this produce was delivered to the warehouse. And all these blocks of information are chained to one another, form links, so that a consumer might be able to scan the barcode and access all this information that has been entered throughout the entire supply chain cycle. And as we said before, one of the problems up to now have been that each player can only see one part, whereas now everybody will have access to all information. No information can be tampered with, no information can be rejected or deleted. There has to be a new transaction that will override the previous transaction, which allows us to have an audit log which is authentic. And all these intricacies have helped IBM, along with major businesses in the industry, to come up with a solution called IBM Food Trust, which utilizes blockchain. And we could discuss blockchain characteristics and specifications for long hours, but let's not. IBM as a provider has all the knowledge, inside knowledge and savviness with respect to the blockchain technology, and it takes account of all information from field to fork. And this IBM Food Trust allows anyone to trace the history of a product, allows all management of certificates and other documents to be digitized and accessible to all within near real time. Of course, with the exception of documents, all other information is digitized, which means that any participant can look into this ecosystem to come up with information that the ecosystem itself has agreed upon providing. So producer has access to some data from the warehouse, and the warehouse has access to some data from the producer. And then, moving on to the consumer, we come up with a consumer who can scan the barcode with his cell phone, with his smartphone or her smartphone, and come up with information as to the quality assurance system that the grower has agreed upon when working with this logistics provider. And there's many other aspects that can be disclosed. So is blockchain something, a technology that is needed when an ecosystem wants to just survive? Blockchain is something that creates value and trust in a supply chain, in a chain of players. It's not for a single individual business. It requires an ecosystem. And within that ecosystem, all players should have a benefit that they can draw off the blockchain in order for it to be useful. Consumers will be able to draw out information that they require, for example, adherence to specific standards of production or distribution. This can help also manufacturers with respect to labeling or to their brand. They can increase brand awareness. And if we move on to the other part of the players, as we have seen in many countries with spinach or leafy greens or some meats, we have distributors that will produce batches that will know how to be able to trace their batches no matter where they are being sold. And this is good for both wholesalers and distributors, especially if somebody needs to recall something. And with respect to IFIs, to intermediaries, this is a circuit. This is a closed circuit. This is a chain, a cyclical chain. So anything that facilitates everybody's work is added value. Once again, going back to Walmart, Frank Yanis at the time ran a trial test with his personnel. He left a mango box on the table and asked his team where those mangoes came from. In using the traditional route and pathways, looking for information from intermediaries, it took them about a week. When this product was entered into the IBM Food Trust, they had a scanning and then traceability in 2.2 seconds. It was mentioned in the video. In 2.2 seconds, we can come up with the origin of a product. Another example that I would like to share with you. We all know that coffee is a huge part of most people's life. It's a huge market as well. But what has been seen lately is that profit for growers is shrinking. A network of smallholder farmers in collaboration with IBM created Farmer Connect, and this allows consumers to see where coffee comes from and thus choose to support specific farmers, either directly or indirectly, in order to perhaps support those that implement sustainable coffee production measures. And then another example, this is the Golden State Foods, one other example of how we can utilize data and connect that to the IoT, the Internet of Things, receiving information during the transportation of frozen goods that allowed us to know whether times were kept, whether specifications, temperatures, etc. were respected. We were able to know whether this batch needed to be consumed earlier, for example, than another batch that was transported with an optimal way versus the first part, which was something that had been transported in a suboptimal way, meaning that it had to be consumed earlier on. And this allows us to reduce food waste, especially on the level of restaurants and catering, which is a huge source of food waste. There's lots of information that is available online. You can see demos. Today I only mentioned 3 examples where blockchain technology solutions have been implemented, but there's lots of partners in this network with respect to a product which is sensitive to grease, extra virgin olive oil. We've got a customer in Tunisia that has already adopted our system in order to credit and certify their product. I've put on the slide my own personal email. I'm at your disposal. I'm also on LinkedIn, and we've got a big team which is here for you to discuss whether this technology could provide a solution for you and your business individually. Thank you.